Welcome everyone, my name is Limbic and this is Starcraft, the Starcraft 2 show aimed at complete beginners. Now today is February 14th, it's Valentine's Day, and I am here in my basement making a video, which I mean, it's perfectly normal. Lots of people are alone in their basement playing video games on Valentine's Day. Nothing wrong with that. Alright. So today we are going over a Zerg build order that I designed to, one, be really easy to do, and two, help you form good habits. It's designed to ease new players into the game and make it just a little less scary for them. This build's not designed to win all the time. It's not designed to carry you through the leagues and, be super pro with. It's just designed to be nice and easy to do. Oh, and allow me to just interrupt my own video really quickly to just say that if any point during this video you feel kind of lost, I've got a video here that explains to you most of the Zerg units, researches and upgrades, everything you'll see in this video, and I've got a video here that actually explains to you the very basics of the game. So if at any point I just make your head explode, you're like, I have no idea what this nerd is talking about, I definitely recommend going back to one of those two videos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's just head on over to Starcraft. Here we are on the main start screen. We're going to go into the arcade. And the reason why we're going to use the arcade to teach you this build order instead of the custom games, ooh, epic voice crack there, is because the arcade has a very nice, useful custom map. So go into the arcade, just search up HOTS build order, and you want this one. It's called Dolly's Build Order Training Map. So go ahead and hit play. And while we wait for that to load, I guess I can bring it back to here. I'd just like to mention that everything in the StarCraft arcade is actually completely free. So if you haven't bought the game yet, if you're still a little on the fence, you can actually download the trial edition basically and try out everything in the arcade section. And there's lots of stuff. There's a mode where everyone's only allowed to build one unit that they pick at the beginning. There's, Dota style games. There's thousands, and there's something for everyone. So I would highly recommend, if you still have not quite decided, or maybe you just don't quite have the money, go ahead and give it a shot, and you'll probably find something that you find quite enjoyable there. Okay, let's go back into StarCraft. You can stare at this gorgeous loading screen. While we wait for it to load, there's a smiley face here. I might have to make a short little edit. Oh, nope, never mind. Okay, we got it here. So why are we using this race, or this map, instead of the just custom game section? The reason is because it makes it really easy for you to, one, you can pick your race in-game here, but let's say you're trying out your build and then you kind of goof up. Like, let's say you do something you didn't mean to do, whereas before, you would have to surrender, basically, and then you would create another game and get into it. Here, you can just hit the restart button, and then you will be able to start the game over, and you won't have to sit through all those loading screens, and you'll end up saving yourself a ton of time. So let's go ahead and hit Zerg and get started here. The first thing you always want to do is select your hatchery, select some larvae, and start building a drone. And this is one of the most important things about StarCraft 2 is you want to be building workers as much as possible. It's really weird with the Zerg race because due to the larva mechanic, you have to choose between building workers and building units. Whereas the other races, let's say you're playing Terran, you're just either always building SCVs, or if you're playing Protoss, you're always building probes. But with the Zerg, you have to choose whether to spend that larva on drones or on military units. So does that make sense? This is kind of why a lot of people recommend that if you're a brand new player, you don't start with the Zerg, you either start with Terran or Protoss until you're a little more familiar with how the game works. But if that doesn't dissuade you, if you still really want to play Zerg, then I totally respect that, and that's why we are here today. So just bear that in mind. You have to choose with Zerg between building army units and building workers, but unless you know that you need army units right away, it's generally better to focus on workers because they will benefit you more in the long run than military units. If you build workers now, you'll be able to build more military units later, if that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and head back into the game. We're going to start building our first non-drone unit pretty soon. We're going to be building an overlord once we have the appropriate minerals to do so. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to raise that supply unit. And if we didn't do this, then we would get supply blocked, which would mean that we are not able to construct any more units. So if I actually try to build another drone here, it says supply depots. That's just a custom map. If you were in a real game, you should say spawn more overlords. And this really annoying voice that people have been asking Blizzard to change for a while now, but they're just like, nah. So once you're at 9 of 10 supply, you want to start building an overlord. And I'm just using these supply numbers as a general guideline. You don't have to have your numbers exactly match mine, and I would recommend that you don't have that happen. So right now, I'm about to recommend you build a spawning pool by selecting one of these drones and constructing a spawning pool once you are at 14 of 18 supply. But the important thing to note here is that these are just general guidelines. This is just a way for me to communicate the information to you. Let's say your opponent attacked you and you lost 2 drones. So right now you're at 12 of 14 supply. I'm not saying you should build an additional 2 drones so that you're at 14 supply and then build your spawning pool. Wait that amount of time. Build the pool when you have the resources to do so while you're also still, building drones. Do you get that? So these are just general guidelines. This is just kind of a helper to get into the head what the timing of it is supposed to be. But I want you to try to move away from building things on specific supply numbers as soon as you can, because that's something that will really help you in the long run. And it will just make it so much easier to learn new builds. Whereas, if you're thinking of them in supply numbers, every time you learn a new build, you have to be like, okay, Overlord on 9 supply, Hatchery on 14 supply, Spawning Pool. Do you get my point? It's much easier to remember Overlord, then Hatchery, then Spawning Pool, etc. So I hope that makes sense to you. So let's head back into the game. You'll notice that once you start building a structure with Zerg, your supply number actually goes down. And that's because the drone that was being used to build it is actually destroyed. So once you are at 14 of 18 supply, you build a spawning pool, which brings you down to 13 of 18 supply. And then once you're at 14 again, you build an extractor, bringing you back down to 13 again. Then you go up to 13, or 14 rather, again. And then you're going to build a hatchery at your natural expansion. And it's really important for Zerg to be expanding much more often than the other 2 races. This is why hatcheries are cheaper than nexuses and command centers. Hatcheries only cost 300 minerals, whereas a nexus and a command center costs 400 minerals each. And the reason why it's so important for Zergs to be expanding so often is, one, the hatchery is actually their production facility. So Terrans build barrackses, right? And then those barrackses produce units. Protosses build gateways, and those gateways produce units. Zerg have to use the hatcheries, which is also their main structure, right? Their town hall structure. Which means that, obviously, in order to increase your production, you can either get queens, which we'll talk about soon, or you have to build more hatcheries. So not only do you have to build more hatcheries anyway, but Zerg units are also deliberately cost ineffective compared to the other 2 races, which means that they require more income in order to compete. The golden rule of Zerg, and this is something that you'll probably hear a lot if you're learning how to play Zerg, is you want to try to always be 1 base ahead of your opponent. So if your opponent has 2 bases, you generally want to have 3 bases as Zerg, if that makes any sense. It's not like an immediate thing, so it's not like the moment you get into the game, 6 supply. Oh my goodness, I have 1 base, my opponent has 1 base, I need to build another hatchery as soon as possible. But just, as a general rule, you want to be 1 base ahead of your opponent. It's not absolute. You don't have to do it instantly, just something to keep in mind. Let's head back into the game. There's a lot of pausing today. That's what it takes when you are explaining things. So once your extractor finishes, you'll want to put 3 drones into it and start mining gas. And then once your spawning pool finishes, select a hatchery and start building a queen. And this is a very important unit because it increases your production. Once you're at 15 of 18 supplies, start building another overlord. Again, we don't want to get supply block. That's nasty. And then you can go ahead and start building a couple of zerglings. And 2 Zerglings will come out of each egg, so I recommend that to start with. You just get 6 Zerglings. It's a nice number that will help keep you safe from most forms of early aggression. You can see our Overlord's now done, and once you have 6 Zerglings on the way, go ahead and start building up more drones. These Zerglings will kind of just be used as more of a defensive / scouting force. You're probably not going to try to win with this kind of attack. So once you have 100 gas in your bank, go ahead and start researching the metabolic boost at your spawning pool. This will significantly increase the movement speed of your Zerglings once it is complete. So once you have these Zerglings complete, you can go ahead and scout on the map, go ahead and see what your opponent is up to. Once this hatchery is finished, start a queen. And something I actually kind of forgot to mention is the moment your queen is done, you want to inject on the hatchery. And what this does is it, after a short time, actually produces 4 extra larvae at your hatchery. Whoops, that is the incorrect button. Silly me. So normally a hatchery will produce up to 3 larvae, and then once it's at 3 larvae, it will not produce any more until you actually, transform those larvae into drones or units. But if you have a queen, you can have her inject, which is basically just the queen throwing up onto the hatchery. Zerg, it's gross. And after a short delay, 4 extra larvae will pop off of the hatchery, so you can have up to 7 that way. And this is really essential because, before where you could only have 3 max larvae per hatchery, you can now have 7. And then of course if you inject again, you could hypothetically get all the way up to 11 and 15, and the maximum is 20. This means that you are able to produce way more drones or units if you use your queens effectively. So you want to inject right as that queen spawns, and you also want to try to inject every time the additional larvae pop off. It's set up quite nicely so that the moment the additional larvae pop off, your queen has enough energy to inject again. And this is probably single-handedly the most important thing to playing Zerg well, is how efficiently is the player using those injects. Indeed, a good general way to tell how good a Zerg player is to just look at their queens. If they have tons of energy built up because that Zerg player was not injecting frequently enough, then they're probably a less experienced player. Whereas the really best Zerg players out there, you'll see their queens have no energy on them most of the time. So you really want to make sure that you are using those injects to their maximum potential. It's really, really important to playing Zerg. Alright, we're going back into the game. You can see our supply up here is starting to get a little full, so it's time to start another Overlord once we have enough minerals. And you can just use these Zerglings to scout around your opponent. If you see your opponent has made a ton of units themselves, then you know that you have to make units yourself. So just start more Zerglings. Otherwise, you want to be building drones, because drones in the long run are far better than Zerglings. So you see this queen here is done. I'm going to have her inject on this hatchery. This hatchery has finished the additional larvae, so I'm going to have her re-inject. So it's very important as a Zerg player to make sure you have a general idea of what your opponent is doing. Unless they're going to attack you, I might as well bring it back up here. We're pretty much done with the build order itself. If you know your opponent's going, you have to know whether your opponent is planning on attacking you soon. If your If your opponent is not attacking you anytime soon, then you want to be building drones and getting up as many drones as you possibly can. If your opponent is attacking you soon, then you want units. Okay, so let's review here. With Zerg, one of the most important things is to make sure you are keeping up your injects and that you are constantly injecting those hatcheries to be getting yourself that extra larva. Another thing to really bear in mind is that Golden Zerg rule. Try to always be 1 base ahead of your opponent. And the third thing is that unless your opponent is going to be attacking you, or unless you are planning on attacking really soon, it's much better to build drones rather than combat units, because the drones will have a far bigger payout in the long run. Alright everyone, that was this episode. Ooh, throat. Alright everyone, that was this episode of Starcraft. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask me them in the comments section below and I will answer them. My name has been Limbic and I will see you all next time. Everything Oh my goodness. We can't have these uneven. No, no, that would make people very angry. Alright.